What do you think of when you hear the phrase passive listening? Maybe it's making the most out of your busy day, or another way of living the language. Whether it's walking the dog, driving to work, or falling asleep, you're in contact with the language for more often, which means that your vocabulary and listening skills improve. It sounds genius. I wanted to love passive listening, but have never been able to make it a consistent part of my life. I tried setting the default starting tab of my web browser to be my podcast website, urging myself just to press play. I tried putting a dozen or so podcasts in a giant playlist so that I wouldn't have to look for new podcasts once the old one ran out, in order to make things as simple as possible. I tried keeping a podcast muted, only unmuting it when I had free time. I tried playing a minimum of 5 minutes of a podcast on the top of every hour in order to try to make it a habit. I bought a $3 podcast app so that I could loop a single podcast, just pressing play once and being done with it. I'm looking at you, Spotify. How do you have this feature for songs but not for podcasts? Get it together. I even bought $40 earbuds that would allow me to easily listen to anything while not at my computer. But despite all these attempts, I was never able to implement any of these methods into my life. Why? Well, because I actually didn't know what passive listening was. If I actually knew what passive listening was, then I would have immediately known that it was never going to work with my lifestyle. I'm an introverted college student who spends the majority of my time alone in my room. I haven't touched grass since March 2020, and I still haven't figured out how the giant light bulb in the sky moves around. I don't hang out with friends that much either, which means when I'm not at college, I'm almost always at my computer doing something. That begs the question, how exactly am I supposed to passively listen to something when I'm never being passive? Over my entire language learning journey, I dabbled with passive listening here and there, but over the past 6 months, I seriously tried integrating it into my life because of my busy schedule. I was taking 5 computer science classes, leaving me with barely any time to learn languages. This is reflected in my public Google Sheet page where I track my language learning, and for the first half of 2020, you can see that there's a lot of days where I didn't do anything. Since I barely had any time for active learning, the intent was to passively listen to podcasts while I worked on homework. Although it seems counterintuitive, passive listening is not passive, and the way I was trying to implement it in my life made me realize that I was multitasking. Multitasking might sound productive, but there's a lot of studies showing that it doesn't make you more productive, actually making you less productive. I can personally attest to this because I can never focus on my homework and the podcast at the same time. It's only one or the other, and it heavily disrupts my concentration. On a related note, intentional disruption is a phenomenon where if you're focusing on something and get interrupted, your focus coming back isn't going to be as strong. A real-life example of this could be responding to a text message while you're doing homework. Even if you go right back to working, your mind still lingers on that message, and your focus won't return to its previous high. These reasons are most likely why passive listening in this way never felt right. I was unknowingly multitasking since I never had any downtime. You can't focus on 2 mentally strenuous tasks at once. No wonder it never worked. Despite all the negative experiences, there have been some times where passive listening has worked great for me. In the past, I've driven to college while listening to Mandarin podcasts, and it was very effective. After arriving at my destination, I would look up unknown words, and sometimes I would even notice an unknown word while I wasn't paying attention to the podcast. All of these experiences have made me realize that passive listening is just casual active listening. For example, imagine passive listening while you're doing the dishes, walking, or driving. Those activities don't require a lot of mental energy, and since you could dedicate your entire attention span to just the podcast, wouldn't that just be active listening in a more casual manner? It's kind of ironic that passive listening uses the convenience of technology to help you with your learning, yet it never worked for someone who's always glued to technology. When I first heard the phrase passive listening, I thought I could just play a podcast in my ear all day and not change anything about my lifestyle. But I've realized that passive listening just doesn't fit into my lifestyle. Don't make the same mistake I did, ending up multitasking and being less productive. Passive listening works for people who actually have a life outside their computer screen, and I'm not one of those people. I'm fine with that fact, because I've gotten to high levels in both of my languages using almost exclusively active learning. In fact, I'd rather spend 15 minutes actively listening than spend 1 hour passively listening. For those of you who listen to podcasts all day while you work or study, I salute you because I have no idea how you do it. Thanks for watching. I'm interested in how you might passively listen, so tell me that in the comments below. I don't respond to all the comments, but I do read all of them. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and press the bell if you want to get notified whenever I upload a new video. For the time being, I'm uploading on the 1st of every month, minimum. See you in the next video. Over my entire language learning journey, I dabbled with passive listening here or there, but over the past 6 months, I seriously tried integrating it into my life because of my busy scheduled semester. No, that's not right. All of these experiences have made me realize that passive listening is just casual active listening.